the different animals and different plants and different things have different energies, and it matters what energy you put in your body. It's not so much about the material; it's not so much about feeding the stomach, but how does it impact your soul and your ability to bring good into the world, right? Good morning, Parashat Shemini, and before we jump in, for those of you who are viewing us on YouTube, if you would like to follow the text in Hebrew, it is in Sefat Emet. You can go to sefaria.org. Go to Sefat Emet. It's the text is in section 15, paragraph 3, and I will post at the end of this video. There will be a quick tour how to find that in sefaria.org. So you can go to the end of this video, find your Sefaria, and then go back to the beginning of the video to hear the lesson. Vehine beinyan zot hachaya asher tochelet. Here is the matter of the verse, hachaya asher tochelu, the animal that you are permitted to eat, or that you will eat.
Right, and right away, Rebbe Reuven, if you don't mind, because this he's pointing out, a lot goes unsaid with the Sefat Emet.
Yeah.
When the Torah starts to begin to teach us about these kosher and non-kosher animals, it says, Zot hachaya. And this in itself, these are the animals. Now, this in itself is interesting, as the Sefat Emet will immediately point out, because the more common term is behema in Hebrew. The word for an animal is behema.
That's right.
Yes, achaya does mean technically the wild animals.
That's right.
And the behema means specifically the domesticated animals. However, in Hebrew, if I say behema, it includes chaya. Yeah. But if I say chaya, it does not include behema. So the question right away is obvious. It should say zot behema. Yeah. Because the truth is that the kosher laws encompass both types of animals. So it should have used the more generalized term.
That's right.
That's the first issue.
Right, and that's critical because the Sefat Emet is going to go deep through as we know, one word could be the opening for a whole wisdom teaching, and right. The word chaya is actually the gateway to the teaching. So
right. So welcome back, everybody. I hope everyone had a beautiful and meaningful Passover. We're entering into the official summer season in the Jewish calendar. And this week's Torah portion is Shemini, as Rebbe Reuven said. The most famous topic of this week's Parsha is where we find the original source material for the kosher rules. The rules of eating kosher food, what's kosher, what's not kosher, etc. And the Sefat Emet is going to take a deep dive into the spiritual, some of the spiritual lessons, one of them anyway, for now. Here specifically, we're going to be speaking about the animal, the large domestic and undomesticated animals. What are the two signs which make a large animal kosher? And very interesting, which the Sefat Emet will get into. I'll just run them by you for everybody as a review. We have the split hoof, the completely split hoof. If everyone has been able to get out in nature and look at a cow or look at a pig and look at a camel, you will notice that if we lift up their feet, their hooves, so certain animals, there are two, I guess it's a type of a cartilage, or we will call it a nail of some kind. So it's actually two. like the cow, for example, is split in two. So that's one kosher sign. If it has the split hoof, it's kosher. If the animal does not have the split hoof, it is not a kosher animal. The other one is
like horses, for instance.
a horse, for example. The other kosher sign in the larger animals is the regurgitation of the food. There's certain animals, like a cow.
Chewing of the cud, it's called.
Chewing of the cud. So what it does, certain animals, like a cow, they have many stomachs. They eat the food. It's a little bit gross to think about it. They spit it back up into their mouths. They re-chew it. Certain animals bring the food up, then re-chew it and swallow it, and other animals do not. So these are the two signs. And a kosher animal requires both these signs, not just one. The pig actually has one of these signs. The camel also has one, but they do not have both. The cow, obviously, as a domesticated animal, and a deer, for example, as a wild animal, an animal not usually in a farm house, also is a kosher animal because they have both of these signs.
Ki chiyut haTorah. So the Sefat Emet says the aliveness, the life force, the life soul, almost you could say, spirit of the Torah, nimtza b'chol makom, is everywhere. So here chiyut and chaya, that's the connection as I see it here. Chiyut haTorah nimtza b'chol makom. It's everywhere. But you could also say Torah, the animals in the Torah, right? They're everywhere. You have created everything with wisdom. Okay, so Rebbe and I may have a different take. Go ahead.
Right. No, absolutely. So this is a quote from the Psalms. Right. Which is it's a familiar quote because it's in the prayer book. We say it a few times. Kulam b'chachma asisa. God made everything with wisdom. In other words, God isn't just throwing things around. Everything is created with a purpose and creates and contains the godly creative life force. Everything, right. Even the animals that are not necessarily permitted to be eaten by Jewish people. So that the Sefat Emet learns from this that there's something deeper going. It can't be like ew, a pig, gross, disgusting. No, it can't be gross and disgusting. God made it. God's wisdom is contained within the pig.
All animals, whether kosher or not kosher, according to the standard, have been created with wisdom. They're all holy.
Exactly. So in some sense, they're all equal. They're all equal.
Yeah.
In their holiness, in their innate holiness, because they contain the godly creative force.
That's right.
Which begs the question even further.
Yeah.
So then, what's going on? Why can't I get to that? In a certain animal, I can in a different animal.
And this is the question. This is Sefat Emet's question that he's going to explain at the end. אבל יש דברים שאין יכול להוציא החיות מחמת התערובות טוב ורע. So there are things or situations where a person cannot bring out now again, is it the chiyut or the chayot?
This is the chayut. When he's talking about chayut, some people pronounce it chiyut.
Yep.
He's talking about the godly life force, right. the holiness of the thing, which is in everything. However, because there was because of the mixed upness of good and bad, which occurred with the first people through the eating of the thing they weren't supposed to eat.
Yeah.
But there were no kosher rules per se for them.
Yeah.
However, God said you could eat. You see the fruit, you see the crops, go eat whatever you want, except don't eat this thing from this particular tree.
Yep.
And they went ahead and they did it.
Right.
And that caused a confusion of the material and the spiritual, of so-called good and the evil within the thing, whereby the human being now has to be able to now we have to have parameters to be able to distinguish, because on our own we don't have the spiritual power to access in everything
Right.
the holiness of it.
I think וזה הסימן, מעלת גרה ומפרסת פרסה. And this is the meaning of the signs that Rebbe talked about before, that in order to know which animal is kosher, so we have the split hoof and the regurgitation of the cud, the chewing of the cud. So
the word,
these are not random signs. Go ahead.
Exactly. So the word kasher means fit for use. Fit for use. So these two signs, as the Sefat will explain shortly, let us know that these particular animals are fit to be used for the purposes of what you were talking about before, of accessing holiness and bringing that holiness into my body. That's right. Becoming part of me, and using that energy, the nutrients of the food, as energy to dispense holiness into the world.
That's right.
Through the energy from that animal.
Right.
But that requires these two signs.
That's right. That's right. And you know what's interesting about that, and we'll get to that, is that what you eat really matters. You know, it's
you are what you eat.
You are what you eat, in the sense that, you know, in the sense of holy and mundane, right? So some things, you know, the different animals and different plants and different things have different energies, and it matters what energy you put in your body. It's not so much about the material, it's not so much about feeding the stomach, but how does it impact your soul and your ability to bring good into the world, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or holiness. I mean, beyond even good, but just at the very basic goodness.
Right.
It matters what you ingest.
Absolutely. Yeah. As a matter of fact, we spoke before that these are super rational commandments. However, according to one of the great early sages, the Ramban, Nachmanides, he famously writes on this parsha that even though these are not understandable ultimately, he says that if you look closely at the different species that were allowed and not allowed, he points out that the species we're not allowed, especially regarding birds and such, are cruel animals, as opposed to kind animals. And that, so this goes to your point, that we literally can ingest the negative energy of a particular kind of an animal, and it affects us and our personalities.
That's right. And by the way, the whole practice of homeopathy recognizes that. When Dr. Hahnemann started homeopathy, recognized that the substances they make drugs from, you know, come from different plants or animals or minerals or whatever that have certain qualities. So the quality of the source of the drug matters to the healing process beyond the chemistry. You know, that was the insight. So it's kind of like there's a little. I think the Torah and homeopathy had a you know, homeopathy is an insight that we see in Torah already.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, which brings me to thinking of kosher animals as medicinal animals in some ways. You know, it's like it's a whole. It goes beyond halakha a little bit, but it's a whole thinking of, you know, of what's the real tichuna, what's the real, you know, quality that an animal has. Anyway, let me continue.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm getting excited here and going a little off the tangent.
No, that's what it's all about, man.
So he says he's going to get into, okay, and this is one of the really more beautiful explanations of these two signs of the chewing of the cud, and, you know, that I've really really read. So he says this. "Ki yesh b'chol davar bet maftechot." It says everything has two openings or two keys, depending on how you want it, but it means the same really. So in everything there are two keys or two gateways to enter into it. There's the pnimiyut and the chitzoniyut. There's the internal and there's the external. So obviously you can see that he's going here. We have these two signs about the kosher. One is the internal, one is the external. So let's see which is which, right? וצריכים מקודם לפתוח הסגר הטבע והגשמיות. It says the first thing we need to open is the limitations of nature and materiality. שלא יהיה מגושם ביותר, to take away some of the thickness, some of the heaviness of the material, megusham, the materiality of it. So he says that's the first task. First task is we need to somehow kind of ratchet down, bring down the intensity of the limitation of nature, of the closeness, the closed nature of our material existence. You want to add something to that? Or?
Right. Well, if you just go forward to the period, and then we can connect it to the sign.
וזה הסימן שסעד שסע שלא נסגר לגמרי. And this is what we have in the sign of the split hoof. That here the hoof is not completely closed. So the hoofs are usually round, but there's a split in it. It's not a complete trap, you could say. So where am I? There is a crack and an opening, which is to eliminate the shell and the concealment.
Right. So the first, there's a two-step process. The first step is for a person to recognize that there is a metaphysical, there is a spiritual element to my physical material existence. And you have to be able to see that. You have to be able to be open to that. In other words, if it's closed over, if that is like a wall, a solid wall that you can't see through, which seems to be a big separation, and I'm not open to it. So the first sign is that there has to be a crack. I have to make a crack in my own psyche to open that wall up a little bit, to peek through.
Right.
That's the shoshas shesa, the crack. There's the coarse materialism of the cartilage that covers up what I'm getting to. But there's a little bit of a crack in there.
That's right. So I can see beyond. I can see through it. Yeah.
Right.
And I continue. ואחר כך צריכים לפתוח נקודה הקדושה פנימית. And he says, once there's a crack, then we need to open the point of the internal holiness.
Right. So now I take it to the next level.
That's right.
I don't just see that there is such a thing, but I can acknowledge and come to comprehend the innate holiness of the other thing, and that it's all contained with God. It's all filled up with godliness.
Yep. And this is the meaning of the sign of the regurgitation of the chewing of the cud.
Right. The idea of chewing something over. We have that expression, right? So once I'm open to the process, now I chew it over, and I can extract from the wisdom and holiness of the thing by chewing it over, and regurgitating the material.
So these principles of the split material reality of the ability to extract holiness and sanctity and bringing it up and out extends to the person who's eating.
And ultimately, if we play that role, ultimately the reward will be, it says, the sages of the Talmud say that in the Messianic age, the animal, the pig, will become kosher. What will it change signs? So they argue what's going on there. What in the world could it possibly mean? So according to this, we see that if we stick to our job and access what we have the potential to access and leave everything else alone, the reward will be that in the Messianic times, the energy and the holiness of even that which we could not access now will become available. And we will realize that even because it's not the thing itself, as we started.
Right, exactly. There's nothing inherently wrong with any of those animals. They're also holy.
Exactly.
Just we don't have access to it.
Yeah. Pigs are beautiful. I've watched them up close carefully. I've observed their behavior. They're extremely family-oriented. They get a bad rap, they roll around in the mud and everything. But I visited sanctuaries and I've hung out with them, and they're incredibly smart animals, actually.
So putting in a good word for all the non-kosher animals, it's not their fault.
Not their fault. It's not even a fault. They're open to most of the people in the world, and maybe they would rather be not being able to be eaten by anybody.
Exactly. Well, we should all be blessed with good distinctions and good ways of regurgitating and bringing up holiness from inside whatever we encounter. Amen. Shalom, everybody. See you again next Wednesday, God willing, 9 o'clock in the morning. Thank you. Shalom for now. Okay, so this is a quick tour. You go to Sefaria's homepage. You click on the top left of the page. There's 3 lines, horizontal lines. You click on that, and that will take you to a page called Sefaria Library. You scroll down to the section called Texts, and you click on More on the top, on the bottom right corner. And then you scroll down a little bit more. You click on Chassidut, and when you're in Chassidut, you scroll down to the section that is called let's see here, other Chassidut texts. And you scroll down and you'll see Sefat Emet is towards the bottom. When you get to Sefat Emet, you go to the title. There's a drop-down menu, and you get to the Sefat Emet table of contents. You will click on Leviticus. You scroll down and you click on Shemini. And there you'll click on section number 15 and scroll down to paragraph number 3. The Hine B'inyan Zot HaChaya. That is the paragraph that we're going to be discussing today.